So, if you can believe it, what Beethoven achieved in the first movement, in its musical and extra-musical dimensions, was entirely contained and controlled within the traditional sonata allegro form, which he knew was essential to organize and to clarify this revolutionary music, which continues to flow in the second movement. But immediately the tone and character change in a major way. Actually, it's in a minor way, a single A minor chord in the woodwinds and horns. Rather stark, coming after so much dynamic energy. All rhythmic motion is now suspended, the chord beginning forcefully but dying away. And this single A minor chord connects with the first movement, since the lowest note in the voicing of this chord is an E in the second French horn. A standard position A minor chord would have A in the bass. But here the low E dominates. The same E that was the center of cosmic activity in the first movement. And here it leads seamlessly to the theme of the second movement, also on E, played by the cello. A fascinating melody in that it barely contains any. It's almost entirely rhythm, other than that minimal shift from E up to G. It's as minimal a theme as could possibly be imagined, just like in the first movement, served primarily as matter, as sound, a basis to articulate rhythmic motion. That same note, E, now in the second movement theme, comes very close to recreating the same phenomena. But this time Beethoven doesn't leave us stranded in the void. So by the addition of simple tonic harmony and dominant harmony, this becomes this. And the warmth and darkness of the sound itself is an integral part of Beethoven's concept. The eternal flow, murmuring, chanting. As he wrote in his Tagebuch, for God, time absolutely does not exist.
That movement always leaves me speechless and wanting for more.
Something remarkable about this movement. Even after such an incredible first movement, you have this second movement, which probably is more famous than the first movement. And yet, again, it's this reiteration that Beethoven is a stickler for some rhythmic ostinato, rhythmic cell that then drives everything forward. It's really, truly something incredible that he has written here.
That movement really transports into the deepest depth of everyone's heart. What is it? Like Chopin's funeral march procession?
Yeah.
Or is it theme and variations, or is it polyphonic prelude, like organ prelude by Bach? It has everything of all of those. And Beethoven's at his absolute highest peak of his mastery of rhythm and harmony, and be able to deliver the most profound emotional communication through the minimalist means. The harmonies are simple goes, almost archaic, sounding like a Gregorian chant at some moments in there. If you just forget for a moment that it's a symphony, which everybody knows, just try to hear it as pure music. And then also the rhythmical content and the melodies moving barely from note to note is, what are we, in the 20th century minimalist compositional technique. It's like everything all at once, but again, like we talked in the previous segment of these programs, it's driven by purpose, and the purpose is to communicate that profound sadness and contemplating the most fundamental and sad and tragic aspects of life, frankly.
So there's really no actual variation occurring here, only an increase in orchestral detail and accompanying figuration. So structurally, we have a single panel or span of stately music. A single chord, an A minor chord in the winds, as an introduction, and 4 statements of the theme, with its second half always repeated. And now the alternate material appears in A major, one of Beethoven's loveliest inspirations in any of his music. So we have a simple, gorgeous new melody in even quarter notes played by the clarinet. It's interwoven with a gentle triplet pattern in the violins. And when I've conducted this work, I ask the violins to play this passage out as if they are the melody, because the violin line is so expressive. Here's the subdominant chord. The dominant 7th chord on A, the flutes and oboes enter. It's serene, it's radiant, streaming from above. A chorale-like bass takes us right to E major. My piano playing is a poor substitute for this.
And Bernstein talks about this sort of movement, interestingly, and we might do a little reaction video of it sometime, or something where Bernstein's talking about this video, which I think is fascinating, because he says that the melody isn't anything significant. The harmony, like you said, isn't something significant either. There's nothing crazy about what he's doing harmonically. And the rhythm, yeah, it's significant. But it's how he puts everything together that's really significant. How he puts all the elements of music writing into something that's not just memorable and unforgettable, yet also deeply moving. And I think that's the genius of Beethoven. And like you said, this minimalism of like what can I take out? You know, in great art is you get to a point where what can I take out? What can I remove? Until I've condensed it to exactly, I've distilled it to the purest form of what it could be to express what I want it to express. I think that's where this is a true exemplary form of Beethoven's genius. I can't find any other words to describe this. I think it's...
Yeah, and I also find this particular movement of a symphony is one of those rare compositions in all of the literature for symphony orchestra, where the orchestral musicians truly can be united as one.
Yeah.
It's the way it's written and the way the melodies complement each other. There's several themes in there, but it's very hard for composers to make write the melodies in such a way that they can exist as unique, its own voices, yet be combined in the chorus of individual voices which work together. So in this particular symphony, together with the absolutely incredible orchestration of it, I've heard that symphony conducted by my own father and by many other conductors, and in many different settings. I love that symphony. It's my favorite of Beethoven's, even over the ninth. So I go to hear it whenever I get a chance, live performed by various orchestras. And what strikes me is observing the musicians in the orchestra finally at the end of the first movement going like, whew, now we are into the real thing.
Yeah.
Here comes that second movement where there's no question of, I might like this or I might not like the theme which is given to the second flute, but I have to play it anyway. So in this movement, everything is just absolutely so perfectly joined together that there's no resistance in playing it. And I think that it just flows into the hearts of both performers and the audiences unrestricted. It's one of those pieces where they're so pure and so beautiful and so intimate and intelligent and all of those at once that it's just a collective experience to be part of that symphony being performed over and again.
And so the architecture of this movement is pretty straightforward. The main theme in A minor, in two halves, with the second half always repeating. The entire theme is heard 4 times in the beginning. Then we have the gorgeous A major pastoral interlude. Now a return to the theme in A minor. And this new delicate figuration will evolve into our next major section or panel, but not before we hear a brief closing passage as the flute, oboe, and bassoon drift off into a wistful version of the counter melody. And there is the new section or phase of this music. And this delicate figuration has now morphed into a counter subject of a fugue. And the main fugue subject is our main theme with a new melodic outline. In the first violins. This is then an actual variation because Beethoven has changed the shape of the melody. And the delicate counter subject now of this fugue is in the second violins. And it, of course, is derived from that delicate figuration. Okay. And this music now very calmly, very methodically gains in power and mass with the fugue counter subject, leading to the 6th statement of our monolithic theme, with the counter subject continuing in the woodwinds. But this full statement of the theme is cut short, leading to the reappearance of that lovely A major passage, also shortened, which leads to the coda, a chant, mysterious and solemn. And the theme's final cadence, this pattern, is now transposed to C major in a sudden forte, which we hear twice. Then it softens, back to A minor, and the seventh and final statement of the main theme, now just a shadow of itself. And the theme's cadence is repeated now, ending on the same chord in the winds and horns with which the movement began, with the same prominent E as the lowest note of the chord, preserving the aural connection with the first movement.
Wow, this is just a really incredible way to dissect the second movement of Beethoven's Seventh Symphony, which, if you are joining us just on this show, welcome. And we are currently finishing off the second movement of the Beethoven's Seventh Symphony. And what a way to wrap it up. What a way to dissect the sections in which this beautiful and memorable movement is made of. You know, this ostinato bass rhythm, which is bum, 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 is something I guess that it's like a heartbeat. It is something that I think Beethoven uses really, really well. Beethoven's really well known for certain rhythmic gestures that are repeated and expanded, and here he just kind of keeps it the same. And it reminds me so much of even something as famous as the Fifth Symphony. And this sort of rhythmic gesture, whether it's also in the Beethoven Fourth Piano Concerto, he always uses these sort of rhythmic gestures to expand the music, but also ground the music. So you never really feel like you're far away from it. And it's the gravitational center in which everything else flows. And I think what I really love about Larry, and Dr. Anna and I talked about a lot about this too, is I think Larry uses this sort of he understands the figure, and then Beethoven uses this sort of figure as a way to ground all the music that he writes. And therefore, whether you're using it as a Larry Rapchak reference in terms of the architectural center blocks, or you're actually understanding as his universe, or you're understanding it as something compositional, it all centers back to that rhythm. And I think this is something that's really special about Beethoven's music. And the more you listen to Beethoven's music, I think that's one thing you can really point out and listen for. Because not only is he revolutionary in this, I think, but also it makes his music so much more memorable. Even amongst all the other filigree that happens, you hear this sort of rhythmic grounding, heartbeat. And so with this, we talk about the sections, right? We have this opening chord, and what's awesome about it is that he also ends with this chord, right? So everything comes back full circle, and you wonder what Beethoven is doing in this. What kind of what's happening? Is this, for me? I keep asking. I want to ask you, the audience, is this a procession? Is this a sort of meditation on life? Does our lives begin the same way and end the same way as it begins? I think a lot about how a lot of moments in our lives come back full circle. And I think for Beethoven, he really understands this sort of concept of all in all. And he, with his philosophy, with the understanding of Eastern religions, I think that he's convinced that everything is encapsulated in art, and everything that we do, all is in all. And as we talked about this in the Seventh Symphony, first movement, you can go back to our previous episodes to have a look at that. So what I also want to talk about very briefly before we move on to the next section is also this idea of using fugues. And this becomes a big big part of who Beethoven ends up it being, especially towards the later part of his life. He really incorporates fugues into whether it is the second last Beethoven piano sonata, or whether it is, let's say, in his string quartets, the grosso fugue. Where else? You can tell me. He uses fugues and fugal writing in such magnificent ways. Oh, of course, the Opus 101 piano sonata. Again, what does a fugue mean? And I've been thinking a lot about this too. And I think he explores this in this movement, and then he further explores it later on. I think that for Beethoven, a fugue is a struggle, is a mountain to climb. It is a way to go from the base up to the heights, to the climax, up to the summit of it all. And he does this in a very cool way. He starts off with strings alone, and then he builds the fugue with the subject, and then he subtly shows off his sort of compositional prowess using the fugue. But it's subtle because it's not meant to say, hi guys, I can write a fugue. No, it's meant to show off that he uses a fugue to build something great. And by the time you get to the theme statement 6 and it's of epic proportions, it's fantastic. You feel so elevated. And the way he ends, a lot of the time Beethoven ends his music with something triumphant, but here he doesn't. It's almost ending with a question or just a repeat of the statement. Maybe that was a question and now is sort of the answer. It starts off with a question asking the audience something that's a bit uncertain. And then he uses that and flips it back and says the same statement, says the same question, but maybe in a statement form. So I think that's what's brilliant about Beethoven. This movement is fantastic. I will recommend everybody to go and find a recording and listen to it again and really, really embrace what's happening, and maybe just close your eyes for a little while and see what you feel, and to tell me at the end, or whether you think this is a procession, meditation, what is it for you? And I think of an imagery which was used by our virtual concert hall team, sort of the night with the moon coming out, walking through the forest. I mean, Beethoven was really known for walking and strolling around forests in the dark, or also just taking walks. And this sort of meditation on nature being also a meditation on life, on the philosophy of living, is really, I think, encapsulated here. So let me know what you think. What a genius. What an absolute genius. And of course, we already knew that, but I think it's up to, and thanks to the Laurie Rapchak, as well as our wonderful producers at New Media Productions, as well as Virtual Concert Halls, who put this all together. So, and Archives of Music, thank you so much for everyone and our team for collaborating together and making all this happen. This team is just so incredible that they don't just do the one thing. They do so many different things, and we are adding to this team. So if you'd like to be part of it, please let us know. We do an amazing amount of shows, and we stream in so many different places too. Just as an example, these are the places we stream at, and we like to do more. We like to be try to form more content that is of impact and value to you, our listeners. So if you have any suggestions, if you have any projects, we would absolutely love to have you. And these are some of the organizations and supporters which we have had in the past who have been a part of our journey, being part of our jury members, part of playing with us, being conductors and collaborators in this incredible journey that is our music. So if you'd like to be featured, if you'd like to be part of these shows, please let us know. Write to us. We have a wonderful website, and you can contact us in so many different ways. And this is a way to, I guess, the best way to put it is to add color and more opportunities to your existing musical experience. Whether you're a music lover, whether you're a musician who's just come out of school or in school, or you've been working for a few years now and you'd like to do something special, we are trying to connect all these people who are around the world. We've got orchestras from Ecuador to the Ukraine to many parts of the US and Singapore. We are just so interested in trying to blend all these things together in order to give you, our musicians, value, but also our audience something to watch, something to enjoy, and ultimately transmit the joy of music making to everyone. So a big thanks to our team. Please check our website out at espressivo.com, virtualconcerthalls.com as well. And without further ado, we'll see you next time for more Beethoven 7 documentary. And until next time, happy music making. Thank you for joining us, and see you next time.